Did you know that the average American generates 102 tons of trash in their lifetime? That's an awful lot of garbage. And so that brings to mind a question, not only how do we get rid of all of that trash, like where does it go? What do we do with it? But also, how do we make less trash? What can we do about that? I'm Mira Dessy. I'm the ingredient guru. I'm the founder of the Healthy Readers Book Club. We are currently reading the book Garbology and learning so much about trash. And so we're learning that different areas around the country handle trash differently. Today, I'm having a conversation with my dear friend and colleague, Erin Knight. Hey, Erin. And she lives in a very different community than I do. And we are going to talk about the differences in trash. So join us for the conversation. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, it's always good to talk with you, Mira.
Well, you know, one of the things that I think is most mind-blowing for me about this book was the fact that the author starts with a couple that are hoarders who had to be rescued from their home. And the challenge was that they did not pick up or did not put out their trash. So they had massive amounts of trash in their home, and they literally had to have rescue crews go in. And he then talks about the fact that for these people, it was they felt bad about getting rid of all of it. So they just saved everything and then saved broken things, and it became crazy. And he said, part of the challenge is not necessarily what we do with it, but how much we make.
First place.
I know. And as we're reading this book, I'm learning that there are a lot of differences because some of our trash that we generate is unintentional, you know, which is kind of crazy. But one of the other things that he mentioned, and this is why I called you, is he mentioned that there are communities where people pay for trash disposal based on volume. And there are communities where recycling is mandatory. And so they actually tend to generate less. And you live in one of those communities.
Yeah, actually, so I'm in Seattle, and when you called me about, having this conversation and things like that, I was kind of like, doesn't everyone pay per volume? Doesn't everyone recycle? I was like, why are we even
why are we even having this conversation?
But I guess that's not true, because I remember, back before COVID, when we used to fly around the country, I would get very frustrated in like an airport or a city where they did not have every option to separate your compostables and recyclables, even in the airport, much less anywhere else. So I know that it's not the same everywhere. And, if you live somewhere else, you may even be personally frustrated that your city doesn't have the resources that they do here in Seattle as far as recycling and things like that. But they have implemented certain programs to motivate people to think about their trash a little bit more and to put more effort into recycling. Of course, even here, people aren't perfect either, but I do think it makes a difference. So maybe we can go into what some of those options are. Maybe someone else in the country or whatever get inspired and want to implement that in their town or something like that too. So if we can.
Well, and yeah, and it's interesting how different people think about it, because like I live near Houston, Texas, and the community that I live in, our trash hauler is Waste Management. I think they do most of the country. I mean, they're a pretty big company. And so we have a 96-gallon trash can. Now, at this point, it's just me and my husband. We don't really fill it, unless there's some, maybe we had a huge party, not happening lately, or, holidays, or if there's been, some sort of like last week, they didn't have trash pickup because of the weather. So we might have more trash then, but generally we have a 96-gallon trash can. And I cannot tell you how many times I drive around my community and I just see people with like their bins overflowing, and it just kind of boggles my mind. But I've lived here long enough that I remember when another friend of mine was on the committee to bring recycling to my community because they didn't always recycle. And she fought long and hard because she wanted, first of all, she wanted the town management to ensure that everybody got a recycling bin, that they weren't going to leave it up to people to get their own bins. And then she wanted a big recycling bin. And they originally wanted, I believe, like a 30-gallon recycling bin and a 96-gallon trash bin. And she managed to get a 96-gallon recycling bin as well. So we have two bins that are the same size, but it was a long, drawn out fight. And even then, people don't recycle responsibly because we're single stream here. We don't have to separate, and we don't do compost.
We'll get into that in a minute. But I mean, I think the point of that I'm taking from your story here, somebody has to do that work. And I'm sitting here benefiting from hard work of other people who've implemented that here. But to really have a change, people, have to have those conversations or fight for the resources. And actually, do you mind if I share the screen really quick?
No, go right ahead.
I was thinking when we were having these conversations about gallons of trash, like to visualize how much
is yeah.
Like 96 doesn't mean anything to me, but here are some pictures of trash cans that might look familiar and how many gallons are. So when we're talking about how many of gallons of trash we're generating, you can visualize that a little bit better.
And so here's what's really startling when you look at this, that 30-gallon trash can, I have a 96-gallon trash can. Supposedly that's enough for 6 people. I'm assuming that's once a week.
Once a week. Yeah, I think this is like the in-house or in your garage size.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, so we have an outside trash can that is 96, 3 times that size. Mm-hmm. And yet there are a lot of houses around here where it gets filled to the brim every single week. Now, some of that is possibly people not recycling, not composting, not breaking down things, that helps too if you crush it. Like, it's kind of interesting because I remember, so a long time ago, my husband and I used to live in Connecticut. And back then we had 3 small kids in the house and we were generating more trash, 5 people. And the community that we lived in, we generated trash. Sorry, we didn't generate. We paid for trash per bag. So we had to haul it to the transfer station ourselves. And because we had to pay per bag, my family got really good at recycling, composting, breaking down, and our family of 5 would generate one exceedingly heavy 30-gallon trash bag a month.
A month? Oh, so
a month. Because we were crushing whatever we had that wasn't breakable. We were recycling. And the community that we lived in, the way it worked, you would go to the transfer station and they had these huge dumpster bins. So you would walk up onto the platform. It was like, this is your newspaper. This is your other paper. This is your green glass. This is your, plastics. This is whatever. And so they had all these bins and so you would just walk, these are your cans or whatever. So you would walk along and separate everything for them. Mm-hmm. And then we composted heavily. And then we crushed everything that did not fit into either of those 2 categories.
Yeah, so you were motivated to do that. I'm curious for the people that are listening to this, if you want to share in maybe the comments or something like that, so we can hear how it works in different parts of the
yeah, country. Definitely. I mean, that would be really interesting to hear.
Is it motivating you to do something about the trash, or does it just kind of get taken away every week? Like, how do you feel about it, and what systems that do you see that are helping you maybe make better
so how do they determine, like, you pay by volume?
Yes, so that's pictures were for the size reference. I know this is a little small. Maybe I can make it bigger. Can you see this? Okay, so we have the residential curbside options here. So when you first sign up for service, you choose what your plan is going to be, and then you can adjust it like from month to month or whatever. So until recently, I also lived in a house with, depending on the time, either 4 or 5 adults.
Yeah.
And we had a 45-gallon trash that got picked up every other week.
Okay.
And we didn't have any problems really. Once in a while it'd be kind of full, but mostly no big complaints. And honestly, people weren't, even in that situation, it was not perfect. I would find, things in the trash and roll my eyes and move it. But But I mean, that's half the size, just about, of what you're talking about, and only every other week. So what you do is you pick your plan that for the trash, but then we also get the 96-gallon compostables and a 96-gallon recycling with no extra fees.
Right.
And we even had 2 recycling bins because of all the Amazon packages.
So they pick up your compost at the curb?
Yeah, all the green waste, all the food waste. You can throw, here I have a chart. This is really wonderful, actually. You don't.
Oh
like,
my gosh, that's amazing. Is that online? Yes, it is. You know what? You'll have to send me those links and I'll put those in the comments down below.
Yeah, sure. So when you're, garden, anyone who's a gardener and compost, usually you don't put meat scraps and
right.
that. You have to be kind of careful and like balance out the ratios and things like that. But the curbside pickup, they take your dirty pizza boxes, dirty towels,
oh my gosh,
meat. Like obviously I'm going to make bone broth, but then the rest of the bone broth stuff I throw in the compost.
See, and that's amazing because here that goes straight into the garbage. Like if we don't go out for pizza, but if we did, that box has to go into garbage because it's not recyclable because it's dirty, and we don't compost that here.
And to add to that even more, like the restaurants around here, for the most part, I don't know if it's an ordinance or just by popular demand. I think some towns have an ordinance, but not all of them do. A lot of them will have compostable packaging and silverware too. So you get takeout, most of it's compostable.
Yeah.
Even some, I don't know if you have taco time down there, but our taco time is like a chain up here, a complete fast food chain, but they have compostable.
Oh, wow. I don't think we have it down here, but I will say before this whole COVID thing happened, I had been working on, if my husband and I went out, bringing my glass container with a silicone lid on it for my own, doggy bag. Yeah, because I got tired of
the styrofoam,
thinking about how much that I know. And some places are better than others. Some of them have like the biodegradable, stuff, or the cardboard or whatever. But even so, it's still a single-use item. Mm-hmm. And so that's not great. But I'm astonished. So where I live, there is now a company that will come to your door and pick up your compost for you. You pay so much per week or per month, depending on what plan you're at. But our community does not compost that way. And so I'm astonished that yours does, because they must be running a really big compost operation if they can take meat scraps and dirty.
Oh yeah, dirty they sell it. Of course, you can buy it for your garden.
Wow.
Local compost or whatever. So that's nice. And it makes your garbage less stinky, right?
Right, absolutely. Well, and the other thing is down here in Texas, one of the things we have to watch out for is black flies in the garbage. And so if you're throwing food waste in there, they're like soldier flies. They're huge, and they just, if they get in there, man, they breed like crazy. As a matter of fact, there is a business down here that will go around and wash your garbage cans for you to try to help keep the stink and everything down. Because in the summer, man, it gets ripe down here.
So that's a consideration. This laundry container is catching my eye because I know you have some good things to share with me.
Yeah, so I actually, one of the things that I've been doing, and so for laundry detergent, I started several years ago. There's a company that I absolutely love called My Green Fills, and I'll put the link down below. But when you sign up with them, they send you what they claim is the last detergent bottle you will ever need. And then, so for years now, I'm going on my 3rd year, when I need more detergent, I just get little refill packets that are made out of recyclable material. And so I'm not throwing away plastic by having to get a new laundry jug every time. And I'm also not paying for water, because basically they send you this tiny little envelope that's about this big that you add your own water. So that's great. Well, the company also now has a branch called Truly Free that has, and I love, like, their everyday cleaner is amazing stuff. And, they have window cleaner and stainless steel stuff and floor stuff and wood polish and fruit and veggie wash. Like they've got all these things. And so I have a series of bottles that I got when I first got everything. And now when I need new stuff, I just get these tiny, slim little refill packets. And so I feel like that's great too, because plastic is a huge, huge problem. One of the things that we're learning about in this book is the overwhelming amount of plastic that winds up in the environment, because it either gets washed out to sea or it doesn't break down. Some plastics can take up to 500 years to break down, which is just really overwhelming.
Yeah, it's hard to think about sometimes. Probably
yeah,
us would be more comfortable not to, but that, I mean, at the same time, it's not going to get better if we don't, right?
If we don't keep something. Well, so let me ask you, like, you don't in any way feel impinged upon because you have to pay by volume for your trash, right?
No. And just from, studying how people get motivated to change and whatnot over the years, I think it is a very effective method. I mean, the difference in cost, if you look at it, is actually not that big of a difference to have more size. But this, we had this for years, even when it was, slightly inconvenient and things like that. And we would discuss it and we're like, do we all want our bills to go up? I think you're splitting this by 5, right? Do you want your bills to go up $3 or $4 a month? No. So then recycle. And they're like, okay. So
there you go. That's so funny. Well, and I'm seeing here that if you don't want to clean the cart, I'm assuming that's your compost cart. If you don't want to clean it, they'll actually do it for you.
Yeah, that was
you pay for
a
it.
big disaster. We never had to do that. But
I'm just saying, like, because down here that would be a big deal. Like I said, and for the 96 gallon ones down here, I think they charge $10 to come around and power wash it and clean it. That's just crazy. And so let me ask you, when it comes to recycling where you are you single stream or do you have to separate everything?
In King County, it's a single stream.
Okay.
Everything that was on this chart can go in the same bin.
Same bin.
You have to take the lids off and have it
right.
not bagged and things like that. They have some standards, but otherwise, that is nice. Makes it very convenient for people.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I like the fact that they break it down for you very clearly like that, because I'm going to have to look, but I don't think where we are, they do such a good job of helping people understand what is garbage and how to put it into its correct category.
Like these little stickers that go in the produce, right? They really don't want you to put those in the
right. And most people go, oh, it's plastic. Is it a recyclable plastic? The other thing is, I know in our area, every now and then you'll see in the community newsletter, there's this whole thing about pizza boxes and takeout containers and all of that. If it has food residue, is not recyclable. Like, yes, you have to clean it first and you can't clean those. So that's kind of interesting.
Yeah, there's a lot of education, but I think there's some crossover here to what we do as health coaches in terms of, like, you want to build a habit or motivate people to change, you have to find the right triggers, the right ways to make it easy for somebody to remember to do these things or to be motivated. Right? There's some overlap here, so hopefully if you're listening in a place where you don't have this yet, it might give you some ideas what you could either do at home or maybe in your community.
Well, and I think one of the things that's important too is to, so for me, there are certain things that I like to do. For example, I bring shopping bags when I go to the grocery store. Now, for a while there, because of COVID, I wasn't allowed to. The grocery stores weren't allowing them. And, certain grocery stores that I went to didn't have paper bags. And so I did take plastic, which was, very upsetting. Actually, it's kind of funny. So the last time I went to the grocery store, I brought my bags. It was this week, and I brought my bags, and the bagger looked at the checkout clerk and said, "Are we allowed to be packing these now?" And she goes, "What? We've been doing this for a while. I said, you guys have been doing this for a couple of months now. Like, I bring my bags. She's like, I was told last week we're not allowed to do it anymore. So they actually had to get a manager who came over and said, well, the deal now is if you're comfortable handling somebody's bags, then you're welcome to use their bags. If you're not comfortable using their bags, then you don't have to. And the funny thing is, I got to a point where we had so many plastic bags. I was kind of like, this is really driving me crazy. What do I do? And then eventually I figured out, and I'm sorry that it took me so long to figure this out. At least when I had either a small cart or one of the little baskets, I would just take it to my car and I would load it into my bags in the car. It takes a few more minutes, not a big deal. And then just put everything back in the cart return in the parking lot, you know, but it takes a concerted effort to do that, you know, or reusing glass jars. My husband yells at me. He tells me I have a jar habit because we have so many jars. Yep, and there you are. See, they make perfect water bottles, but they're also really good.
Not drinking out of plastic. That was a good solution.
Yeah, right. Or the other thing is, I absolutely love things like jam jars for leftovers. They're perfect because you get like one serving in there of a casserole or a soup or something. Yeah. So it's really good.
Well, there's lots of things people can do once they start to get interested or get educated. But you're bringing like all your book club people into this topic through reading this book. So what other kind of books do you have on the agenda this year?
Well, actually, the very next book that we're going to be reading is The Big Fat Surprise: Why Butter, Meat, and Cheese Belong in a Healthy Diet.
Oh, delicious.
And Erin's like, maybe I want to be in the book club. Yeah, I mean, it's wonderful. Over the last couple of years, we've read some amazing books about, you know, the environment or about different food things, you know, organic food, how they feed kids in school. I mean, we read this really amazing array of books. I'll put a link in for, I have a bookshelf, if you will, online where it has all the books that we've read in the book club so far. So I'll put a link.
How do you discuss it? Do you meet like this on Zoom, or do you?
Yeah, so the way it works, actually, it's pretty cool. Right now, we are on Facebook, but we're going to be moving off that into a separate forum so that we can do threaded conversations instead of this whole long stream of consciousness thing. So that shift should happen in another, hopefully, couple months. We're building the back end right now. And then, so when we read a book, so for example, we're reading Garbology right now. And as I learn things like, for example, and I have to look it up so I will get it correct, the Puenta Cana, is it Puenta Cana? Darn it. There's a, so I didn't actually write the name of it. There is a very large trash disposal landfill in California that actually offers tours. Like you can take a tour and they show how they handle trash, and it's become this big thing. There's also a recycling plant in Vienna that is apparently quite the place. It looks beautiful. And so I go and I find some of those things, or I find articles. Like, here's a really amazing fact that I learned from this a long time ago, before we had modern landfills and modern trash disposal and all of that. The way a lot of urban areas used to handle their trash is they had pigs wandering the streets to eat the garbage. Then eventually they moved them to piggeries. They moved them to piggeries, and they would bring all the trash to the pigs. And then eventually, like, they began to sort of landfill more. But just learning that is kind of mind-blowing. And so I go and I find pictures, or I find articles with more information or that kind of thing. So I share all of that throughout the month. And then at the end of the month, we have like a Zoom call to discuss the book club and what we learned or what we thought. One of the other things that I thought was really fascinating about this was learning how little trash someone can make, so right now, the section of the book that I'm in, because we're almost at the end of the book, is this woman named, I think, B. Johnson. Yeah, B. Johnson. And she got so overwhelmed by how much garbage her family was creating that she put herself on this personal mission to get as little as possible, and then started this whole less trash movement. Mm-hmm. I'm going to read you what was in her unrecyclable, non-compostable, not able to get rid of it in some way, trash for her family of, I believe, 4 for an entire year. So this is what they had left over at the end of a year.
Oh, yeah.
The receptacle that it was in, and I'll tell you what that is in just a second. Several pieces of bubble gum, the plastic wrappers from prescription bottles. So that means when she had prescription bottles, because you're not supposed to put the label in there, she peeled the label off and recycled just the bottle. Plastic tamper-proof seals from contact lens fluid, so the little peel-off thingies. An expired laminated ID card. The plastic stickers from grocery store fruit. We were just talking about that. The backing from postage stamps. The clothing tags that I guess they cut off their clothes, the ones that were material that wasn't recyclable. Masking tape from a paint job. And it all fit into a mason jar.
What?
Yep. 1 year's worth of trash right there. Mm-hmm. I'm like, dang, everything else they either reused, repurposed, or recycled.
So we're all probably a little bit between B. Johnson and the hoarders, right? We're between.
But you know, it's interesting. So after reading this book, one of the things that I'm going to do starting today, for 1 week, I want to keep track of all of the thin plastic that comes into my life. Mm-hmm. So thin plastic is things like grocery store bags. And I don't, you know, the plastic bags, which when I went grocery shopping this week, I didn't get any. So that's fine. But I bought carrots. And because I'm being hyper conscious about that, I realized, oh my gosh, when I finish that pound of carrots, that bag is plastic and it's a single-use plastic. And I mean, it can be recycled, but the problem is that plastic has to go into a special plastic container back at the grocery store. Like I'm going to have to take all of my thin plastic back to the grocery store to put it in a special box. It can't go in my 96-gallon recycle because it's not that kind of plastic.
Yeah.
And so I just want to see how much thin plastic do we get in a week. It's kind of crazy.
I think it goes through a lot. Yeah. And yeah, you have to, with COVID, it's kind of hard. I don't think they let us use the reusable bags here yet. But
oh, really?
We kind of took a step backwards in terms of what we can do, and then generating even more with masks and PPE and things like that. So
yeah,
tough year, but hopefully we get back to our good habits eventually.
Well, that's what I'm hoping. That's what I'm hoping. Anyhow, I wanted to, you know, talk with you to learn a little bit more about where you are. And so I find it interesting because I'm willing to bet that if everybody had to pay by volume, there would be more incentive to generate less trash.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I hope to hear that more people are paying by volume in the future. Because like I said, it's not a big price difference, but somehow it's enough to motivate, you know, to do better.
Well, and I really, really love the fact that your community does the composting, because I know, for example, in some areas, like I could, if I wanted to, set aside a small corner of my tiny backyard for composting, but we have so many rodents and raccoons and possums and things here that in an urban setting, it's not a great thing. Sorry, suburban. I'm in a suburban setting, but if you're in an urban setting and you're living in a townhouse or a condo or something like that, like you can't compost. Where are you going to put it? Like in a jar on your fire escape?
Yeah, picking it up is pretty useful. I was going to show you. These are pretty small. I just got one of these this year. It's like a little tumbler because I do want to use it. I started doing a little gardening, and I'm like, what? You want $9 for a bag of compost? Right? So I started composting. And then the other thing, What was I gonna say about this? Oh, when I was looking at this too, another option that can help with the smell and the rodents and things like that is like a worm bin. So
Right, permaculture.
boxes, and it could even be a bench. So you can really use it in a pretty small space. But I didn't want to deal with the worms. But
Yeah.
you can basically have two sides, and the worms like go back and forth and compost everything. But yeah, you can have it so like in your driveway or your little yard, it's a multi-purpose thing because it's a bench and compost, and there's worms taking care of the all the work inside.
Yeah, vermiculture can be a really good way to get rid of kitchen waste, because they can take a lot of things. They can't do coffee grounds, I believe, or eggshells, but they can do vegetable matter and stuff like that. So that's great. I know the last house that we were in before this one, my husband built me a beautiful compost bin, and we actually had two. So we had a big one that was for branches and leaves and clippings and that kind of thing. And I should say, the community that I live in now, we can put out a trash can that has yard clippings and sticks and things like that, and they will take that, but they won't take food waste. So they are doing some composting. Anyhow, so we had a big yard waste one, and then we had a smaller one that was, I don't know, it was sort of like almost pyramidal in shape. And so you throw stuff in the top, and then every now and then you know, pull the top off and shovel it all up and mix it all up, like once a year, and then, or once every 6 months, and then once a year, you know, just pull the whole thing off, and you've got this beautiful lump of dirt that we would put on the garden beds, or if I needed a little extra for a plant pot, I'd grab some of that, and it was all crumbly and fabulous. And I loved when we let it sit too long, because you know, we just didn't need it, or we were so busy, and you go to dig into it and there's like a whole bunch of worms, and you're like, hello, because you know it's healthy if there's a lot of worms in it. So that's kind of cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for sharing with us, Erin. This is amazing. And like I said, folks, I'll share a few resources down below, but please leave comments. Let us know. Yeah, let us know what garbage and recycling and trash and composting and all of that is like in your community. We really want to hear that. All right. Well, Erin, thank you so much for chatting with me, and I will talk with you soon.
Of course. Bye.
Bye.